Is leadership something you're born with or something that anybody can develop? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. What is leadership? Leadership is nothing more than the ability to influence other people from a place of certainty and a place of integrity. When we look at the expressions of leadership, you can actually see it falls into two different kinds of categories. The first is what I call low conscious, and then there is high conscious. Let's look at the difference between those two because it'll really establish a benchmark for how people can develop or shouldn't develop leadership. When we speak about low conscious leadership, I'm talking about people who like to be in charge for the sake of being in charge. It's very much a self-centered projection. It has its basis in ego, motivated by how many followers that they have, how many people idolize them, or how many people listen to them. A lot of the time they use a lack of leadership skills and cover that up with an ability to use title or authority in order to get their way. Low conscious leaders are usually rattled when people disagree with them. They are usually controlling or bossy if they get out of balance, again, relying on title or authority or resources rather than the act of doing what's right. There's a strong driver of self-interest rather than interest for the greater good. Often they will rely more on force than an emanation of natural power or grace. Now, if you contrast that, high conscious leaders are often motivated by what they believe to be the greater good over and above personal self-interest. And that greater good is often defined or viewed through a lens of high conscious values in terms of servant leadership. High conscious leaders measure themselves not by how many followers they get, but how many more leaders that they can create, thus designing themselves out of the picture because it's not about them or their ego. They're motivated by setting a high personal standard for themselves. They like to be the example, not the imposition. So let's get back to the question of whether this is an instilled or inborn trait or something that can be learned and acquired by everybody. That comes down to the age-old question of nature versus nurture. It's not really a debate, it's an inclusion. Let's take playing the guitar, for example. You're going to have some people that have a natural, inborn, innate ability to make those guitar strings sing. People like Eric Clapton, the great legends like Jimi Hendrix. But that doesn't mean that nobody else can learn how to play the guitar if you don't have that natural flair. And that comes down to personality. So the personality when it comes to leadership can be looked at through certain lenses. You have your natural introverts, people that tend to be more shy. You have those that are a little bit more verbose or extroverted. That tends to be a response to what we call a survival archetype growing up. If you had controlling, bossy parents, then chances are you wanted to withdraw rather than trigger them by challenging them. So you designed your personality around keeping peace. Peacekeepers don't make good leaders because they always want to please people rather than take tough decisions that may be required to be taken. Then you have more what I call the controlling personality. If you grew up in an area where there was a lot of chaos in your life and you developed a response to that, which is, I need to be in charge. Or, for example, you have younger siblings and the onus was put on you to look after them. You had to grow up quickly. And for that, you needed certainty and a plan. If you remain at the low conscious, that becomes bossy or controlling if you don't have the learned skill of how to work with people rather than just project your own model of the world onto them. i.e. you want to be the imposition to retain control and certainty rather than be the invitation by being the example. Then we have the warrior-based archetype. The warrior-based is about getting stuff done. You define yourself by how much you get on your to-do list or how many goals you can accomplish. It's an inherent sense of urgency and accomplishment, always looking for the next mission. A lot of the time, we don't take a step back and see how our mission is in context to the larger mission. We're so busy winning our own battles, we forget to look at what the entire landscape of the war is looking like. Then we also have what I call the magician energy. The magician energy is all about creativity. It's a little disorganized. It's very visionary. It's always coming up with the ideas, but doesn't have the warrior's action or the execution or will to go and get stuff done. Always distracting ourselves. A lot of procrastination is in the magician energy. The reality is we have access to all four of those personality archetypes. They're called archetypes for a reason. They exist throughout theology and mythology and all sorts of human stories and endeavor for as long as we have recorded history. Just like if I was to ask you the question, Are you left-handed or right-handed? You would most likely answer one or the other. When the reality is, we have two hands, we're both-handed, but we tend to favor or lean on one as a go-to more than the other. We do have all of those personalities. The question is, in order to develop the skill of leadership, we need to know which of those we are being high conscious with, which we're being low conscious with, and which is the most appropriate energy at that time. If you have to make a tough decision that's not going to please everybody, but you feel it's the right decision that will serve the most people long term, you don't want the lover energy stepping up. If you've got to get stuff done because you've made the plans, but nobody's really acting, you need to be able to take charge and have that warrior level of energy step forward to get stuff done and actually execute. Otherwise, you're going to have a meeting to set up a meeting. It starts with one area first. Before you can lead anybody else, you need to be able to lead yourself. What is your relationship to self-mastery, self-leadership? Are you able to get yourself out of bed in the morning without your warrior boss threatening you with being fired if you don't? So being able to lead ourselves, what kind of horizon do you look at? Are you looking at the next move ahead, or are you taking a step back and seeing, how does this decision affect me downstream in my life, and what is the impact on others? Those kind of skills are what's required to become a leader of yourself first. Because if you can't lead yourself into the daily battle of your life, or to organize the plan for your life, or to know how to connect with other people when they're looking for empathy rather than judgment, to be able to get creative and draw on your own internal resources at a time where you're fresh out of ideas, then you have no hope of being able to lead a family, a meeting, a team, let alone any aspirations for moving larger groups of people. Starting with yourself is always the key, and from there you will attract people that recognize your sense of certainty before you actually then have the ability to instill certainty in others. Remember, low conscious leaders try to enforce certainty through authority, whereas high conscious leaders become the example, and therefore that invitation is self-serving. People will naturally gravitate to them. You speak to anyone that's been in the military or been on a battlefield. They know which officers they will follow blindly anywhere because they have absolute trust in their leadership ability, even if they don't understand the plan themselves, versus those who may even have a good plan, but I question their ability to lead. Why is leadership so important? Because if you've noticed and look around, there's a lot of uncertainty in today's world. The economy, people's future, aspects around health, and that uncertainty needs to be replaced by people who have certainty. And if you don't have certainty in your ability to lead yourself, this world is in trouble. Leaders are paid more. They are hired first. They are fired last. They have an innate quality that people recognize something in them deeper that they want for themselves, and therefore you don't have to rely on force in order to be able to get your way. People will naturally respect and admire your position because you have something that this world needs right now. That ability to stay calm in the face of uncertainty, that ability to be able to make decisions that aren't self-serving, but actually take into account 4 or 5 moves ahead on the chessboard and see the implications downstream. Your life can either be an example or a warning. We get to choose that. We don't get to pick other choices. And if you don't choose proactively to have a life that's an example, by definition, you'll actually be a warning. And we can look back at either our parents or caregivers and usually put them in quite easily one of those 2 categories. Yes, the alcoholic father and the twin story, which if you've not heard is a famous parable. Essentially, you had a father who was an alcoholic. He had twins, biologically identical. And when they grew up, they both had very different lives. One became hugely successful financially, started a business, employed many people. Another was in and out of rehab and ended up in prison as a drug addict. They were both interviewed. And to the success, they said, why did you become success? To the person who was the drunken in prison, they said, why did you become a drunk? And they both gave the exact same answer. If your father was like that, what would you become? You see, our environment never defines us. It simply gives us the opportunity to define ourselves. And as a leader, we take that choice. As a non-leader, we succumb to the external pressures and then usually take the path of least resistance. Now, if you really want to step up and become a leader and lead yourself first and become bulletproof to stress, to have that level of personal responsibility where you can walk confidently through your life, check out one of my programs called the Elite Mentorship Forum. It is a 6-month program that is designed to create you as a leader from the inside out, covering all of the aspects that we've covered and a lot more. We also have a trainer program where we develop your ability to lead others once you have learned how to lead yourself at a high standard. We have 1,000 5-star Trustpilot reviews, and if you'd like to find out if you have got what it takes to be teachable, be able to learn the kind of leadership skills that I teach my peer group and my trainers, click the link below for some more information, and I look forward to seeing you on your journey of leadership.